I would like to speak to the parents of potential trans kids. Those of you who are parents who have kids who have come out to you as trans and are now wanting your support. Now, this is something that's going to be kind of hard for you to hear as a parent, but if your child is trans, you need to own the fact that this means that your child didn't feel a level of support that they needed in their life. Transgender, contrary to the typical professed ideology narrative of being trans, is not something someone is born with. I lived for 6 years of my life as a woman. I thought I was born that way. I thought I was born trans. And anybody that tried to tell me otherwise, I would tell to go pound sand, because they were defying my identity. This was who I am, this is my identity. You need to take your ideas and shove them. But the reality is that any identity issues, every identity is formed every time. Not the best place to stop and talk. Every identity that a person has, whether it has to do with gender or not, just your identity in general, every identity is formed over a childhood, over a sequence of events, experiences that you have as a person. As you're growing up, you are making sense of the world around you. You're seeing people around you. You're seeing how you show up in the world, what's expected of you in the world, and you establish a belief about yourself, an identity of who you think you are, what you think you are. We all do it, no matter who we are, whether it's got to do with our gender or not. We establish an identity based on the experiences we have and the perspectives developed in those experiences. And so, how's a person supposed to record a video when there's dogs everywhere barking? Because identity in general is a product of a person's experiences, then when you look at things like gender identity, it's no different. It is still a product of a person's experiences. A person's gender identity is the same as any other identity. Just it happens to be formed through a different sequence of events that caused a person to want to defy their own biology, like I did. Because I truly, honestly believed that I was born in the wrong body, felt that it was the right thing to do and justifiable to defy my own biology. They recently put this roundabout there in this intersection. Causes all kinds of trouble for the trucks trying to come through. So, I want to be kind of direct to you parents of trans kids. If your kid identifies as trans, this actually means that you didn't show up for them somehow in their life. And I don't want you to feel bad about yourself as a parent when I say that. We're all just trying to do the best we can. I'm a parent myself now, and I don't show up the best ways. I don't know the best ways to show up. I've got my own traumas, my own experiences in my past that causes me to show up the way I do as a father now in my family. We're all trying to do our best, and I'm not blaming parents for their kids being trans, but the reality is that it is the environment that a kid grows up in that programs them to be who they are and to develop the beliefs that they have. And so if your child is trans, it's not that that's your fault, but you had a big hand in that. You are their parent. You are the one that raised them in the way that ultimately they developed the belief in their mind that they needed to defy their biology. There's countless other influencing factors here, right? They go to school, they interact with their peers at school, they see things on TV, they watch movies and such, and all of this plays into the formation of their identity in their mind. Everything they perceive, everything they hear. When I was younger, when I'd see things on TV that were of a gender role nature, TV shows or movies that portrayed people having certain gender roles in a relationship, and my poor little trans identifying mind at the time would grasp onto that. I would hyper analyze every little interaction, every little thing that was said about what was normal for a man to do or what was normal for a woman to do. And if you have a trans kid, they're going through this as well. As they're living their life, everything they see on TV, movies, at school, in their immediate family, everything is looked at through the lens of feeling wrong in your own body. Feeling like you're somehow wrong in your own body, and you can't feel good unless you make a change. And for those of us who identify as trans, the change naturally is to change our gender to the gender that we feel is more in alignment with who we feel we really are. So, if you have a kid that identifies as trans, say your son comes to you and says, I am actually a girl, I'm not really a boy. What they're saying is, I hate the boy parts of myself, and I feel, or I have this belief, that being a girl would be better. As a former trans person myself, I want the best for all, okay? I want the best happiness, best confidence, the best for everybody. I want all children, all people to have everything they need, everything they want. I want them to feel happy and confident in their own bodies. And there is this tragic thing called gender dysphoria that many young people deal with. And I dealt with it hardcore. I felt so wrong in my body. I felt so much like I was born in the wrong body. I was a girl, but I was in a boy's body, and I didn't know what to do with this. My parents didn't know what to do with this. I was raised Mormon. My parents were never going to accept anything other than me just being the gender I was born as. That's just what you do in the Mormon church. I grew up with a tremendous amount of gender dysphoria. I know what it's like to feel so wrong in my body, and I know what a lot of these young people are going through, this feeling that this just doesn't feel right. I just don't like the body I'm in. But again, this is a belief that was developed over time because certain experiences led them, like myself, to believe that you're actually a girl in a boy's body. But this doesn't even make sense. This isn't reality. This doesn't happen. I, as a trans person, had to try to claim that I was born this way, that this happened in utero, that it was in my mom's womb, that my brain developed into a female's brain while my body developed male. I had to believe that, and I had to keep saying this to make it okay, to make it right that I was living the way I was. It's a hard thing to hear, I'm sure, to be told that your kid's transness is kind of your fault. I don't want to say it's your fault, but parents need to own the responsibility that they have in their kids' lives, in their kids' development. Like I said, you didn't know. You didn't know what else to do, what else to say, how else to raise your kids. You didn't know. You were doing the best you could. And next thing you know, your kid shows up and says they're trans. It's not your fault, but you did have a role in it. And now you have a role in how you proceed from this point forward. Your kid is telling you they want to take hormones. They're 12 years old. Do not let your kids take hormones. Biologically speaking, we are a machine. Okay, we're a human organism that developed either male or female, unless in the case of intersex individuals where the body legitimately formed biologically different. There is a biological difference in the genitalia, how the genitalia formed and things. But as far as the typical trans-identifying person, there is nothing about their biology that is different. It's all up here. It is all a belief. Our bodies, biologically, are a machine. It is a machine that formed the way it formed for whatever reasons it did. For whatever reason, I, for example, was born into a male body. My mother's womb created a baby boy, to which my consciousness attached to. Whatever you believe, however you believe, the reality is that my body was obviously born biologically male. And therefore, it makes no sense whatsoever, considering my body to be the machine that it is, a human organism that it is, it makes no sense whatsoever to put female hormones into a biologically male body. Psychologically, it was amazing. At the time when I began hormone therapy, I was so happy. It felt so good. It felt like it was making my body female, and I was happy about that. But the reality is, I was defying everything about biology. I was essentially putting water in the tank of my gasoline-powered car. I was fueling my machine, my physical body, my human organism with the wrong hormones because my mind was telling me that's what I needed. But it was destroying my body. It does not do good things to the human body to put the wrong hormones into it. It does good things for the mind for a period, but if the body is unhealthy and the body is being destroyed, eventually the mind isn't going to be happy either. When the body's not happy, the mind follows suit. And as far as a transgender individual goes, we feel like our body's happy by taking the hormones, but over time, when you're fueling your body with the wrong hormones, your body will start to react by responding to being fed the wrong hormones. And when this happens, it will take your mental state with it. Now, if your mental state follows the state of your body, now what position are you in? You took hormones to affirm your gender, to feel better in your body, to not have so much gender dysphoria, but now the hormones begin causing you health concerns. They begin to take your body out, and now you feel unhealthy, you feel unhappy because your body is now responding to being fed the wrong hormones, and now you're not happy anyway. Kids are an interesting experience. Children, they do not have the life experience to know the repercussions of their choices, which is why we don't allow kids to drive cars until they're 16, and even that is too young for a lot of kids. A lot of kids I would hate to see behind the wheel at 16. They just don't quite have the life experience necessary to understand how careful they need to be because they can't comprehend long-term effects. They can't calculate long-term consequences. And we all know that about kids. We all know that about young kids. But young people have a difficult time really calculating long-term consequences. And so as their parent, do you really want to go along with supporting your kid in destroying their own body, even if it is for a temporary mental increase? Even if it is going to make them feel a little better about themselves now, do you as their parent support them in doing this, knowing that they're physically destroying their body, which later is going to result in them not being happy anyway? Now, I'd like to talk a little bit more about what I was talking about, the fact that you are their parent. If your child is expressing this gender dysphoria, expressing that they feel they are trans, that is because of the environment that they are in. Their environment fed to them a very specific sequence of events, and their perspective and interpretation of those events caused them to develop in their mind this belief that they are trans, that they need to live as the opposite gender, the opposite sex. And you as their parent stand in a very, very delicate position. You as their parent needs to love and support your kids. You need to let them know that you love them, that you're there for them, and that you will always be there for them, that you're not going to abandon them just because they're expressing themselves a little different. Because one thing I've noticed is that when kids identify themselves as being trans and they start presenting themselves as trans, if their parents reject this, if their parents treat them as if there's something wrong with them and they withdraw their affection and withdraw their love, that trans child is likely to go even further away. They find a sense of community in the trans community. The trans community welcomes people who are transitioning. Like, we are your new family. We accept you. We accept you as one of our own. Come over here. We see you. We love you. Your parents, they don't matter. They were your blood family, but your chosen family is more important. We're your chosen family as your trans community. We'll make you feel good about yourself. Come over here. We can be our feminine selves together. And your kids will find a sense of community in this, and they will leave you. If you withdraw your love and affection from your kids because they identify as trans, they will go find community and connection elsewhere. Because we as humans thrive on connection. We have to have connection. We need it. And we will find it wherever we can get it. And we will try to adapt ourselves to fit into whatever community we identify that we are accepted in. And so if their family community, if you as their parents withdraw from them and treat them as lesser because they're identifying as trans now or presenting themselves as the opposite gender, they will say, well, fuck you, I'm finding my community somewhere else, and they will go even further from you. So it is vital, it is absolutely vital that if you have a transgender child, it is temporary, okay? Think of it as temporary. Don't think, oh, they're lost. I can't be around this kid anymore. They're not my child anymore. You might even disown them. How dare you? You can't live like this. This is, what an embarrassment. What are my friends and family going to think about me? Now I've got this person on YouTube telling me that it's my fault that my kid's trans. So, again, I'm not telling you it's your fault, but you can't deny your role in your child's life. And the fact that every little influence that a child perceives, every experience a child has, if they have these experiences in your household under your care, and they eventually arrive at the place of claiming they're trans, this is a product of their experiences. And something happened in their childhood under your care that caused them to arrive at this place. And so now it is your responsibility as their parent to not abandon them, to know this is only temporary. It is only a temporary thing. For some people it's not. For some trans people, once they grasp onto the trans identity, like me for example, I swore I would kill myself before I would ever not transition. I was so dead set that on being a woman, and that was what I had to do in my life in order to be happy, that I basically told my wife, I can't go on living if I don't do this. If I don't have the surgery and live as a woman, I can't go on living. And your children might feel the same way. But it's important. It is very, very important to stay firm, to stay strong in your knowing that they are still a lovable, valuable human being. They just happen to be expressing themselves and living in a way that doesn't seem quite in alignment with how they were biologically born. That's okay. Continue to give them love. Continue to be there and support them. That doesn't mean giving them the affirming care they're seeking. That doesn't mean handing over the hormones to them that they claim that they have to have in order to be happy. That to give a child hormones that defy their biology, I used to be very supportive of kids on hormones. Okay, being a trans person myself, I saw that had I got on hormone therapy early on, I could have stopped the changes that the testosterone would cause to my body. That my physical body would have, had I gone on T blockers early on, that I could have avoided becoming a man, and that now I would be fully female. And so because of that, I saw the psychological benefit in allowing kids to do hormone therapy and puberty blockers early on, because I thought it was in their best interest. I thought this was something they were born with anyway, so you might as well go along with it. You might as well affirm them. You might as well give them the care they need, give them the hormones they need so that their body stays in alignment with their mindset. Now I know the horrific tragedy of this. Because it is a belief that was developed over experiences and in their childhood, if they transition, that belief can change. Now, obviously, if the belief stayed the same for the rest of their life, then clearly they'd live the rest of their lives happily as the gender that they chose to live as, and all would be well. But that's not the reality. The reality is we are very complex as human beings. Our minds are very complex. Our identities are very complex. And our identities were formed over a series of so many different experiences on such a complex level that it is hard to really identify any one thing that caused a person to be trans, that caused a person to develop gender dysphoria. There is no one thing. Every single person's life is entirely unique, with a entirely unique set of experiences and circumstances that programmed into a person their sense of self, their sense of identity. And so I have a tendency to now speak in kind of general terms for the rest of the trans community, because I now understand that although we all do have our own unique experiences, and every person is on their own path, what I do know is that gender identity that defies biology is absolutely a belief. It is not something a person is born with. A person may be born intersex with different genitalia and things, but if a person is born with intact genitalia and they don't have chromosome issues, it is a belief. It is entirely a belief. And it is my observation that 99.9% of trans-identifying individuals are in this category of it being a belief. And because it's a belief, beliefs are very strong. People hold so strongly to beliefs in their religion that they will kill people in the name of their religion and things. Once you hold on to a belief, one of my favorite quotes is from Terence McKenna, and he says, never to believe in something, because when you believe in something, you preclude yourself from any other possibilities. Like, for me to believe that I was trans, to believe that I was born that way, precluded me from the possibility that perhaps it was just a belief and it was temporary and it might change, and that someday I might horrifically regret having had the surgery. But at the time, when it was a belief in my mind, I felt perfectly justified in having the surgery. I felt perfectly justified in taking female hormones. But as soon as I understood that it was a belief, and that every trans person, that it is a belief that is developed over the course of their lifetime, over their childhood, I could no longer keep living the delusion. I finally was able to see outside of the tiny box that I had lived my whole life in. But as long as I was holding on to that belief that I was born a female in a male's body, there was no accepting anything else. If someone else tried to tell me it was a belief, I would have laughed at them. I would have said, this is not a belief. I was born this way, you idiot. This is how I'm going to be for the rest of my life. I am going to die a woman. I just want you to understand that at the root of a trans identity is a certain level of self-hatred. Every trans person hates themselves. They wouldn't want to do such drastic things as completely change their whole identity if they didn't hate their other identity. And so when you really think about this and think about what kids in today's world are dealing with, when you consider the fact that being trans is rooted in self-hatred, and you as your trans child's parent is the one who is responsible for giving them the childhood they have, the household environment that they grew up in, the things that you allowed them to be exposed to, the things that you spoke about around them. My mom, for example, was always talking bad about men. Always talking bad about boys. Men and boys, they're just disgusting, worthless. Women are better. Women are superior. Boys are just gross. I heard that my whole life. Now, hearing that from my own mother, what do you think I was gonna do? I developed the belief that, well, clearly my mother hates men. I'm a boy. I can't be a boy. The other thing that happened to me was in the Mormon church. I was taught that having sexual feelings towards someone of the opposite sex that I wasn't married to was wrong, that made me a sinner, that made me wrong to have these feelings, these natural, normal, human, male attraction feelings towards a female. I was told that was wrong and that you needed to suppress that somehow. And so my mind, growing up in the environment I did, developing this belief that I was really a girl in a boy's body, I developed the belief that this feeling that I had towards towards women, towards girls, was wrong. And what my mind did was it calculated it to mean that what I wanted was to be that girl, that those feelings, those sexual feelings that I was feeling towards a girl, that those were actually feelings of me wanting so desperately to be her. It's weird. I have had to unravel my own gender identity in such a way over the past 6 months. 6 months ago, I was living perfectly happy as my feminine woman self, having had the surgery, feeling perfectly content, perfectly justified and happy in having made that decision to have surgery. But now, recognizing that it was all a delusion based on beliefs that I developed in childhood, that I was a girl trapped in a boy's body, I can't go back to that. It doesn't make any sense. It makes absolutely no sense for me to use the women's restroom, for me to wear a dress, for me to present myself as a woman, to claim I am a woman. I was born male. My body in every way, shape, and form is male, other than missing my penis now because I made the horrific mistake of having a surgery based on a belief. And so I want to speak to the parents of trans kids. You're doing great. Just know that the reason your kids are identifying as trans is because something in their life made them believe that. Some sequence of events caused them to develop this idea that they need to be the opposite sex. And that is because they felt like there was something wrong with being that sex, like they could not be the gender that they were born as. When we all know that's ludicrous, that's insane. We are all the gender that we were born as. You are born into a body just exactly how you were meant to be. You can choose to express yourself in any different way, but it doesn't change your gender. It doesn't, just because you have surgery to remove your penis and have a surgically crafted vagina put in its place does not make you a woman. I was never a woman. I never will be a woman in this life because my biology formed male, and it's okay. And that was the greatest awakening I ever had, when I realized it was okay for me to love myself just the way I am, in my male identity. And if you have a trans child, they just need to know that they are okay. They are lovable, they are valuable, no matter how they express themselves. But do not, under any circumstances, allow your children to take hormones or puberty blockers. They are destructive to the human body, and because it is based on a belief, there is someday in the future, they may have an awakening like I did and realize they made a horrid mistake. Wouldn't it be great if 10 years from now, your child realizes, oh, wait, that was all just a belief I had that I needed to live as the opposite sex. I'm sure glad I didn't have surgery. I'm sure glad I didn't take hormones long enough to destroy my body. We as human beings can express ourselves however we want to. There are certain expectations. People might think you're weird for expressing a feminine side when you're a man. But the reality is we're human beings. And human beings tend to establish norms and standards that we all have to adhere to. And religion has made this standard of men and women, and you have to look a certain way and behave a certain way. You can't express yourself any different than what God and the church tells you can. Kids growing up in a household, their perspective is different than those of us as an adult. They don't have the life experience to make sense of what they're experiencing and perceiving. And so if they feel unhappy in their life, and then there's this trans community over here that's saying, hey, here's some hormones, the answer might be that you're trans. And your kid might say, oh, Jesus, maybe I am. Maybe that does answer why I've been struggling so hard. So your daughter might start taking testosterone and living as a boy, thinking it's going to make her happy. I know some trans men that have been living as men for many years now, and they are perfectly happy. They seem to be perfectly happy as men now, living a life that they never could as the females that they were. And for those people, I am very happy. I'm very happy for you if you are a trans individual that actually found long-lasting happiness in your new gender identity. That's great. But the people I want to speak to are those who are similar to me, who fully, with every fiber of your being, believe that you're female and that you need to have that surgery or take those hormones so that you'll feel good about yourself. And then one day you arrive at the realization of, oh crap, I was always a man. Or I was always a girl, and it was okay. I should have just loved myself the way I was, rather than going through all this hassle. I mean, the trans experience is not fun. It's not an easy road to take. You are literally swimming against the stream almost every step of the way. Taking hormones that defy your biology is a major swim against the stream. It's a swim against the biological stream. Your body is trying to produce its own hormones based on your biology. And if you defy that, that is going against the stream. Going out as a man in a dress like I was. I would go to all kinds of events. Me and my wife would show up as our happy lesbian couple selves at these events, and I'd be in my dress and presenting as a woman, and I felt like that was perfectly fine. No, I didn't. And that was a situation where I had to crush my own feelings of discomfort in those environments. When I would go out in public as a woman, I had to deny the fact that it was so uncomfortable. I had to make myself present in those situations, and it felt so difficult. I got so tired of everywhere I went, every single place I went, feeling like people were watching me, people were thinking I was crazy, people discrediting me. As a trans person, trying to be an entrepreneur, for example, a trans person that presents a business idea or tries to start a business has so many roadblocks. As a trans person, typically you're seen as, by the majority of the population, as a trans person, you are legitimately seen as having a mental incapacity. And I was trying to run a photography business, for one, would never get any clients. Nobody wants to hire someone that they think is not mentally stable. And that was the struggle. That's where there's a lot of talk about trans rights in the workplace. That those of us who are trans, we're just trying to live our lives like anyone else. For the most part, we just want to live a normal life as the gender that we identify with, and this means also wanting to work a job the same as anyone else. But the sad reality is a trans person who shows up at a job interview has a far less likely chance of getting a job than someone who's not trans, because it is seen as a mental instability, a mental incapacity. And I recognized this and I experienced it over and over. For the past 6 years, I've been trying to do business. For the past 6 years, I have been trying to succeed at things, trying to get noticed for my photography, for my videography. But when you're trans, you are literally seen as less of a human. So that was another way I was swimming against the stream constantly. I was trying to live true to who I felt I was inside, but in order to do so, I literally had to swim against the stream of life. And when you recognize that all trans people are doing this, while living true to your felt gender identity feels amazing, there are so many aspects of it that are not amazing. There are so many pains that come along with trying to live in this world and our cultures and societies when you are defying your own biology. I found personally that I was very much welcomed way more than I expected I would be. I still cannot believe that I never encountered a negative interaction in all the years that I was out there presenting as a woman. I was out there as a man traveling to Mexico and Canada and California and Florida, all over the country as my woman self, and never had one single negative comment, negative interaction, nothing. And it blew my mind. Blew my mind that I didn't. But at the same time, it didn't stop me from constantly worrying that I was going to. I was living in constant fear that every time I used a women's restroom, which I was very happy that my wife many times was there with me, my wife and daughter and me would all go to the restroom together because we could go in the same one. And that was great. We'd go clothing shopping together, the three of us going through the women's section and picking out clothes. No, that's cute. And trying it on and everything. It was great. It was the three of us girls living life together. Like I said, the sad reality is that it ultimately, in the end, it turns out that being trans is a belief. And it is a belief that is developed over the course of one's lifetime, over the course of one's childhood. Some people arrive at the belief earlier than others. I personally believed I was born in the wrong body from a very young age, but I didn't know what transgender was. I honestly thought that I was the only person on this whole planet that felt like I was a girl in a boy's body. I used to search on the internet. I used to get on, back before the days of Google, I used to get on the internet and I'd sit there and I'd type, why do I feel like a girl? Why do I feel like a girl trapped in a boy's body? And I never could find anything. Nothing would ever come up that gave me an answer. And it wasn't until I was in my 20s, in my mid-20s, that I just happened to search the right string, the right search term or something. And when I did, it brought up Susan's Place, an internet forum for trans people. And I was like, what is this? Are you telling me this whole time I've been thinking I've been living alone on this planet with this condition, and here there are thousands of other people that feel the same way? It was such a relief to me to find out that I wasn't alone in this. But the reality was that even though it was real, what I was experiencing was real and it was shared by other people, it was still a belief, just like it's a belief for all of those other people that share the same feeling. And so I guess that brings me to another thought, that I've been getting a lot of kickback from the trans community for expressing this opinion, that being trans is a belief. It is not a popular opinion among the trans community, obviously. I mean, it wouldn't have been popular with me. If someone tried to tell me it was a belief I had, I would have told him to go pound sand. This is who I am. I was born this way, and I'm going to defend that, and I'm going to have the surgery whether you like it or not. And I'm going to live my life as a woman whether you like it or not. That was my feeling. And now, looking back, realizing that it was all just a delusion, all just a belief. And I'm like, now I legitimately feel bad. I feel bad for showing up around kids, like going to my daughter's school and picking my daughter up at school and having her friends have to go through the confusion of what's going on here. Is your dad a woman now? What is this? And I let myself go through that because I felt it was necessary to live true and authentic to myself. But true and authentic to myself is actually how I was born. True to my biology, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with expressing some femininity here and there, but to claim that I'm a woman? Absolutely not. That is so against everything. It's not okay. I mean, I'm perfectly supportive of other trans people presenting how they want to, because I know that it is a real belief to the person experiencing it. Even though it is a belief to the person believing it, it is their entire reality in every way, shape, and form. And anybody that tries to tell them otherwise is crazy. And so you might really have a challenge on your hands with your kids. If you have trans children, they're not going to want to listen to any reason. They're not going to want to hear that it's just a belief. And if you try to tell them it is a belief, like I said, they're likely to pull away from you and go find another group, a trans community that will welcome them for their trans self. So as a parent, it is vital that you support your kids. Even if they're defying their own gender, it is very important to let them know that they are still loved and valuable. That you still love and support them. I'm still here for you. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not kicking you out of my house just because you are defying your own biology. That's fine. I'm here to support you in this phase, this temporary phase of expressing yourself the way you need to. And as long as your kid feels love and feels support and feels like they're okay to express themselves in any way they want, they will come back. They will eventually realize, I was born this way. There's no reason I can't accept being who I am, being the way I am. If your child was born male and they're temporarily right now experiencing transgender feelings that they should be female, that's not necessarily going to last. Sometimes it does, but the fact is we live in a day and age now where the trans ideology and trans community is so pervasive in all of our schools and communities that it makes it so easy for your kids to grasp onto that. It makes it so easy for your kids to say, oh, that might be an answer for what I'm experiencing, these depressed feelings I'm feeling. They can all go away when I go be the boy I was really supposed to be if the person's a girl. So again, like I said, my best advice to parents of trans kids is to just be fully loving and supportive of them, because at the root of their trans identity is a sense of self-hatred, a belief that they've developed that they can't be the gender they were born as, and that happened because of the environment they grew up in. Again, not to make it your fault as their parent, but it is your role as their parent. This is a role you have played in their upbringing. The things you have exposed them to, the things you have said in their presence has all been absorbed in the little sponge brain that they have up in their head, and it has been calculating this whole time, what do I need to do to continue to get the love that I need, to continue to get the needs met that I need. If you've never read it, the book The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk, one of the best books you could possibly read ever to understand your trans child. It's not about gender identity. This book is not about gender identity. It's not about transness. It is a book that talks about what makes us who we are, what makes us develop the identities and personalities we do. And it was partially my reading that book that made me completely shift my perspective on my own gender identity. something that I thought I was genuinely born with. After reading that book and understanding what causes a person's identity to develop over their childhood, it all came clear to me. And I said, I am a man, always was a man, and I always will be a man in this life, and that's fine. That's a beautiful thing. I love myself. I love myself as a man. That's okay. I hated myself for the longest time, and I'm done with that. I'm ready to live happy and love myself. And I want the same for your kids. I want your kids to love themselves as well. But that is largely your responsibility and role as their parents, as the person that has raised your kid. It is your role to be that safe, secure, supportive caretaker in their life, to let them know that they are valuable and loved regardless of how they express themselves, but know that it's temporary if they feel like they have some value on the other side of this temporary gender expression. Thanks for listening.